In this question, we are going to organize categorical data. Why is this data categorical? So let's go ahead and just click on the data button and we will see the actual data. Now it's categorical because it looks like these are words, not numbers. Also, it wouldn't make sense to average your major, right? You can say average major of these people. So it wouldn't make sense. You can't add, subtract major. So this is categorical variable. Now, when we summarize it, unfortunately, Desmos calculator will not actually compute the frequencies for you. You would have to manually count them. But luckily, this data set is not particularly big, so we can do that pretty easily. So biology here, where I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people were biology majors. We're going to check it in a second just to make sure. Education, I've got 1 person, 2 people, and 3 people. All right. I think that's it. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's hope that's 3. Political science, that's easy to see. That's 2. Sociology, let's look at that. Well, do we have anybody in sociology? Looks like 3 here, 4. So I think it's 4. And do we have any undecided? Well, I see 1 over here. 2. Looks like 2. Okay, so let me just check it to make sure. Okay, so these are correct. So next I need to compute relative frequency. So if you only had a simple calculator, what would you have to do to compute relative frequency? Well, the relative frequency is defined as each frequency you divide by the total frequency. In other words, you have to add them all up. So if you had just a simple calculator, let's just go on the resources here, open up Desmos. So if you had to compute it, you know, the old way, you would just add them up and you get 16. So this was 16 people data set. And then you would just divide each number by 16. And then you would have to round. And of course, if you just have only 5 categories, it's not that long. But what if you had 10, right? And that would be really time consuming. So what we need to do in Desmos is we're going to define a list. So it's like a list of numbers. And I call it a capital F for frequency, but you can call it whatever you want as long as you're consistent. So if you later on you want to refer to F, it has to be capitalized. Now, we want to put square brackets. Square brackets are the same, like right next to letter P, so they are on your keyboard. So you just press square brackets, and then you put the frequencies separated by commas. Okay. Now, if you wanted to add them all up, there is a command in Desmos called total. So what that does is just adds up 5 plus 3 plus 2 plus 4 plus 2. And I already showed you that that's 16. Now, how do we compute these relative frequencies? So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to type the word round. Why are we doing round? Because it says round relative frequencies to 3 decimal places. So I want to already round, so they come out all nice and ready for me. Then I'm going to say, okay, F, which is my list. Well, right now it just gives me my list back. But I want to divide the list, each number of the list, by the total. So I'm going to divide by total F. Now, what is going on right now? Why is it giving me all zeros? Because it rounds to the nearest integer when you divide, okay? So because it's a small number, but that's not what we want. We want round to 3 decimal places, it says right here. So we need to put a comma after the fraction. So right now, see how it blinking on the bottom? We don't want that. We want the cursor to blink. We can use the right arrow. So just press on the right arrow. Now it blinks in between, which is what you want. And then you put a comma and 3. Okay, and that just gives you your relative frequency right away so that you can put them in, which is what I am going to do right now. Now, by the way, one check that you can do for yourself is like if you were to add them, then you're supposed to get 1. So that if you, especially if you have time, I don't know, if you're pressed for time on the test, you might not have time for this, but if you have time, I would add the relative frequencies and check if the sum is 1. Now, it's not quite 1. You can see that there is 1.001, but that's because it's a round off error. So if it's like 0.999 or in this case 1.001, that's okay, as long as it's close to 1. Not off by a lot, then you know you messed up. Okay. Now let's answer some of these questions. So the questions say, what percentage of students from the survey reported their major as education? Now, the relative frequency is basically already the answer. So we have the relative frequency of 0.188, but it is a proportion, right? Because we're taking the frequency divided by the total. Now, to convert that to a percentage, you need to multiply by 100. So we're just going to multiply this number by 100 and put that here. Now, anytime it says something like the second question, where it's what percentage of students did not report? So the word not means that it's everything but this. So because the total is always 100%, anything that says not this, you just subtract from 100. So whatever we just found 18.8%, so the rest is going to be everybody else. So that would be 81.2%. Now, this one is the or question. So this is education or political science. And we are using basically additive rule for mutually exclusive events where we just add in the corresponding relative frequencies. So education is 0.188 plus political science, that's 0.125. But again, this is not a percent. You need to convert the percent by multiplying the answer by 100. Okay, so now that would be the final answer.